So my story is partly about two boys I knew growing up. One was named Jeremiah and the other I think was named Vernon. But for some reason we all called him Holt, don't ask me why. Keep in mind, this is a short version. I'm leaving out a lot of details here to avoid turning this into a novella. Growing up, my house sat right next to a cemetery. On the other side of it lived Jeremiah. He was 2 years older than me, and a preacher's kid. His family wasn't really strict, but their particular brand of Christianity stressed the idea of turning the other cheek. They were opposed to all forms of violence. Jeremiah wasn't even allowed to put up a fight in self-defense. As for Holt, he was my age, but much bigger than me, and mean. I caught a nasty beating from him when I was 11. By the time he was through with me my face was cherry cobbler. Since Jeremiah wasn't allowed to fight, Holt often used him as a punching bag. I still remember seeing it happen the first time. Jeremiah was older, taller, and no weakling by any means. But down he went and Holt wailed on him mercilessly for a long while. It was a couple of years after Holt had beaten me up like that. The scene brought the memory rushing back. I felt like I was watching a flashback, only from the outside. I wanted to help, but my feet may as well have been stone. Knowing I was too much of a coward to do anything still bothers me, to tell you the truth. A couple years later, Jeremiah's folks die in a freak accident. He ends up living alone, working odd jobs around town to support himself. My dad feels sorry for him. Gives him some work to do around our house. Just simple repairs. Turns out Jeremiah's pretty handy. Some quick background here before I continue. There was a house down the road from me where some of the old men in town used to hang out and drink all day. Holt starts visiting this house. He picks up drinking. Just beers at first, but pretty soon he's downing alcohol like it's water. Bad news bears. Holt becomes more violent. Gives Jeremiah a severe beating one day while drunk. My dad says if it happens again, he is going to teach the little bastard a lesson. I don't care if he's just a kid. Dad used to box, so this is a pretty serious threat. But not long after this beating, Jeremiah becomes a bit of a recluse. Then I notice him spending a lot of time at the cemetery. He always shows up after dark and he'll sometimes be there when I'm going to bed. I could see the cemetery from my bedroom window. Some days I wake up and he'll still be there in the morning. One day I'm outside after dark and I see him heading into the cemetery as usual. I decide to follow him. By the time I catch up to him he's kneeling by his parents' graves, whispering, "Jeremiah?" I say. He turns around quickly and I see him wiping tears from his eyes. I'll keep this part brief, because there's just so much to say. The two of us end up talking for a long while and Jeremiah eventually tells me that his parents have been appearing for the last month. Every day. They're usually there in the morning, looking sad. They tell him that they can't cross over to the other side because Jeremiah's pain is keeping them anchored here. I was always kinda skeptical of these stories, but Jeremiah seems sincere. Truth be told, he seems scared. His parents have been talking to him about Holt. They say he's possessed by something. That he's going to cause a lot more pain and ruin many lives unless someone intervenes. When Jeremiah's parents first began appearing, they looked sad but otherwise normal. But with each day they've been looking more listless. Their bodies have begun to bend like they have a huge weight on their backs. If he doesn't do something soon, they say, they're going to wither away before they're able to cross over to the other side. As he's telling me this, Jeremiah's hands are clasped together tightly, shaking, like he's angry. He says he doesn't know if this is God testing him. He says it feels cruel. He wonders if maybe his parents are the devil in disguise. Before I can even so call this in, he stands up and marches out the cemetery gate. I watch him walk up the road to his house, and disappear in the darkness. Fast forward a few days. It's early afternoon. I'm hanging out by the cemetery when I see Jeremiah coming down the road towards me. He walks by and his eyes meet mine. He nods and waves, like always, but then he says, "Hi there Anon. Keep your distance." Then he keeps right on walking. I wonder what he meant by that, and I watch him as he walks down the road. All of a sudden, there's Holt, staggering out of the house where the old men drink. He's Otis drunk, as my grandfather would say. Holt falls over right into the middle of the road as Jeremiah approaches. I hear Holt's ugly voice slurring his words. "What the hell are you looking at?" I feel a tug in my heart, and I think, I can't watch Jeremiah catch another beating. Without thinking, I begin to hurry over. Then I see a flash of something in Jeremiah's right hand. There's a loud bop, and a splatter of red all along the dirt road, and Holt falls backward onto the ground. The old men come stumbling outside. They see what Jeremiah's done, but Jeremiah didn't even pause. He's already turned around, heading back towards his house. He passes me. Our eyes meet again, but he doesn't say a word. This next part is going to sound fucked up and hard to believe, but it's hand to the Bible true. Nobody cared. I ran home to tell my dad what had happened, and he didn't seem the least bit concerned about Holt. If anything, he was more worried that Holt's family might try and hurt Jeremiah. Still, someone had to tell them, so my dad figured he'd do it. He was gone for a very long time. When he returned, he seemed distraught. Something really bothered my dad about that visit. He's hinted at it before, but he never said what it was. The only definitive thing he ever told me was that they seemed relieved when I told them. Then the old men, the drunks, they buried Holt's body out behind the house where they always hung out. I don't know if they felt responsible, or if they were pressured by the neighbors, but Holt's buried back there now. As far as I know, no police were involved. Fast forward. Years later. Jeremiah's become more normal, less reclusive. He was at our house replacing some windows one time. It was just me and him. We talked for a bit and I brought up the time we spoke at the cemetery. I asked what happened with his parents. Did they cross over? He paused, and wouldn't look at me, but he said, "I don't know. They didn't come back, so I guess that means they're okay." I felt extremely awkward. I just said that's good and turned to walk away. But Jeremiah stopped me. His hands were resting on the windowsill, shaking. He still wasn't looking at me. Do you think I did the right thing? Imagine that question. I had no clue what to say. I just told him what my grandpa used to tell me when things were bad. We try our best, Jeremiah. The rest is in God's hands. That's it. That was the first time that those old stories hit home for me. Sorry for the length.